So, Star Trek. On the spectrum of Star Trek fans, I'm probably not that far up, but I am a fan. I've seen all of the movies, and the ones that people generally find the best. I agree there. 2 and 6, obviously, and the J.J. Abrams films. In terms of the TV series, TNG is the only one. Oh no, actually, sorry. Embarrassingly, TNG and Enterprise would be the only series of which I've seen every episode. The original series, just the odd one here and there. Deep Space Nine, Voyager, back in the 90s, I saw kind of the odd episode. So I've seen enough of DS9 to know that it probably is the best. I've seen like the Pale Moonlight and some of the later episodes. Oddly, when I saw it back in the 90s, every episode I saw seemed to focus on Nog, which was not exactly a great, sort of like the Wesley of that setup. So it didn't kind of sell itself to me terribly well, but I suspect at some point I'll go back and watch all of DS9 and say, yeah, that is probably the best. Oh, and also I've been to those rocks outside of LA where I think several episodes of the original series were filmed, and climbed up the sort of most famous outcropping in not very appropriate shoes. So I didn't dare climb all the way up to the top, but a moderate distance. Anyway, so putting all that together, for any other fandom that would make me quite a big fan, but given how excessive Star Trek fans are known to be, probably not low to middling. But anyway, I'm enough of a fan to have checked out the trailer for the new series coming this year, Star Trek Discovery, or STD, unfortunately, and doesn't look very good, as a lot of people have said. The diversity thing doesn't bother me per se. A lot of people I've seen are saying like, "Oh, you're complaining that Star Trek is SJW. Star Trek has always been SJW." No, it hasn't been SJW. It's always been kind of like just kind of equal opportunities and groundbreaking back in the 60s when you had Uhura kissing Kirk and I guess arguably even in the 90s when you had black captain, female captain. So it has been groundbreaking, and it has had it showed lots of diverse characters, but it hasn't. It's just they've been there. They hasn't made a big deal of it. We don't know. I'm hoping it will not be like this, but I have a fear, given how conspicuously non-white and non-male it is, and given that trends at for example at Marvel with their, I'm not a comics guy at all, but I'm aware of what they've done to their print comics with changing all the characters and just pumping in all this SJW bullshit. So given all that, and given like discover your destiny, all that wank, I have a horrible feeling that it will be preachy. And Star Trek does deal with issues with varying degrees of success, but generally with a bit of subtlety, a bit of allegory. But there is a suspicion that this is going to be beat people over the head with this stuff, and that's no one wants to sit through a fucking gender studies, feminism, white men are bad lecture. And if it's not like that, and it might not be like that, then great, but it could be. Actually, these superficial things, gender, skin colour, sexual preference, species, these aren't important. What is important, which is kind of the message of Star Trek, what is important is what these individual characters are like as individuals and the narrative. And I know it's just a trailer, but I got no sense of what these people are like, people and non-people are like. No sense of any character conflict. I don't count the Federation doesn't fire first. We have to. That's just nothing. No sense of character conflict. no sense of any narrative really beyond, oh, there's some asteroid cluster and a thing in the distance. I mean, why? What's the USP? Why should we watch this? And the conceit of focusing on the first officer rather than the captain kind of superficially sounds fresh and an interesting take, but it's gonna box you in. It's gonna limit what stories you can tell. I mean, the captain of a starship in Star Trek is like the hub, the nexus of everything that happens. You know, diplomacy, first contact, pretty much everything. He or she, or they or it or whatever. The stories kind of naturally revolve around them. And while you can have episodes that don't involve the captain at all, it just seems pointlessly boxing themselves in. And of course, boxing themselves in even more is the decision to do another prequel. And what, just terrible. Just why? I mean, Enterprise. I watched all of Enterprise. I kind of got into it, particularly towards the end. It is flawed, particularly early on. It's not quite as bad as some people make out. If it had kept going, it might have, gone to greater things. But that was a prequel. But there they had like 100-year margin to play with, so continuity wasn't this kind of thing, this constant albatross around their necks. This is, well, I think even already they've kind of instantly I'm not a big Star Trek guy, but I'm aware that they've already effectively violated continuity by saying 10 years before 10 years before Kirk and Spock, 10 years before Kirk and Spock. It's like, well, I think the Enterprise of the original series was already in existence then. So, but this, it all looks totally different. So already off out of the gate, they've pissed off Star Trek fans, and it's 10 years as opposed to 100 years. So they just left themselves no wiggle room. It's just pointlessly boxing themselves in. So I mean, I will probably watch the first episode out of curiosity, but I do not have high hopes at all. It would have to really surprise me for me to give it a chance beyond that. What looks much more promising, unfortunately for the makers of the Discovery, is Seth MacFarlane's Star Trek spoof show, the Orville, the trailer for which looks a lot better than Discovery. His humour is hit and miss, and it's not for everyone. But I didn't laugh out loud at the trailer, but it looks fun. There were some bits that I chuckled at a bit. It looks, and from what I hear, they're not just. It's not just going to be comedy. They're actually going to take the sci-fi seriously. I think he said that in an interview. So yeah, it looks more Trek than whatever Discovery is, and it looks fun. I mean, the one thing, TNG I liked a lot, but perhaps its most conspicuous flaw was humour. TNG got a bit better in the films, but hit and miss there as well. But in the series, humour was not something that it did well. Thinking that the outrageous Okona in one episode, where you've got this kind of supposedly Han Solo-ish, rugged, kind of womanizing smuggler guy, and it's just kind of cringy. If MacFarlane can do TNG with decent comedy, then that could be a really good show. Or, like with Discovery, the trailer could be a bit misleading and it may turn out to be not what I expect, but I have high hopes for the Orville. As for what I would wish to see in were I ever, and of course this will not happen because life isn't like that, were I ever, given one of my dream jobs, which would be to write a new Star Trek series, I would set it. Well, I haven't seen much Voyager. I unlike with DS9, sell me on Voyager beyond 7 or 9's tits. There's not a lot. There's some decent episodes, but so much shit. And Nemesis, of course, in the films after that. In an ideal Trek universe, I would set a new series right after the Dominion War at the end of DS9, but I accept that probably there's too much continuity stuff. So anyway, I would set it post the TV series up to now, and the Federation is victorious after all these bloody conflicts. So it's sort of superficially triumphant and stable, but actually kind of rotting away. And I would do like a sort of Game of Thrones in space kind of show, like a series arc, and you'd have individual stories in each episode, but really the focus would be on like a long form, season long storytelling. I'd focus on various characters. You'd have some on starships, some sort of out exploring, some people kind of back home, some politicians, spies, and the basic story. And it's easy to say this without sort of having any details at all, but I would have kind of various factions working against each other, but basically undermining the Federation. The Federation is sort of slowly falling apart due to sort of rotting from within and some outside influences as well. And I would have some characters some characters being involved in these various conspiracies. I would bring back what's he called, Benjamin Maxwell, one of the guys from TNG who gets arrested after shooting up some Cardassians, and he's kind of released from prison and sort of exonerated amongst some circles, and he becomes sort of like a figurehead. I would have Sisko and Garak's actions in the pale moonlight, whereby they basically they killed a Romulan senator with varying degrees of culpability in order to, with ultimately good intentions, to bring the Romulans into the war against the Dominion and save the quadrant, but save the quadrant, save the dream. That's another franchise. But I would have that come to light, and obviously this is shocking to people in the Federation, and shocking to the Romulans are appalled, and I would have the Federation being pulled apart, and at the same time you'd have kind of traditional exploration stuff going on with this kind of weakened but still powerful Federation, sort of out on the the reaches of known space, and eventually species and things they discover there could sort of factor into what's going on back home. But that's I would move forwards. I would not be not ignore continuity, but have yourself in a place where you can build on what's come before and go off and do whatever you want, because there's not a lot of suspense when you're like 10 years before things that are going to happen. There can't be any. You're always aware that it's going to work out. It's going to be fine. Whereas if you're going forwards, then you can really, you could do anything. You could have the Federation collapse, something else rise in its place. You could have characters die. You could not worry about whatever the uniforms are going to be like. You can make the ships as cool and Apple Store-ish or whatever goes beyond that, Microsoft Surface-ish as you want. There's no restriction. So yeah, let's see what happened. Oh yes, and the J.J. Abrams films. I don't know what it is about J.J. Abrams. I don't think it's just me. You sort of go in and initially you enjoy them. They're sort of like cheap calories. Like it's 2009 I think, Star Trek reboot. I came out of the cinema. I was like, yeah, that was And then over time you kind of become less enthusiastic, and I'm embarrassed to say that I had almost as positive a reaction having seen Into Darkness. I mean, I've got Into Darkness on DVD, which is I hope that's the high watermark of my dubious taste in films, because Into Darkness is it's just shit. And kind of the same to a lesser degree with Abrams's The Force Awakens. You come out of the theatre, you're like, yeah, but empty calories, and it, if Discovery is like a combination of SJW preachy shite and J.J. Abrams shortest tension span bollocks, then it will be terrible. Oh, and one other thing on Discovery. This might sound nitpicky, but I think it's actually quite telling. There's a line, I think it's Sarek, the Vulcan, says, "What are you doing out there on the edge of Federation space?" And that is a worrying, if that's any indicator of the dialogue, it's like he would just say, "What are you doing out there?" He wouldn't spell it out for the benefit not of the person he's talking to, but of the audience. What are you doing out there on the edge of Federation space? Are you paying attention, low IQ viewer? Well, perhaps it sounds nitpicky, but if that's... oh, well, we'll see, I guess. Bob out.